It's worth diving into modern power a lot more. Remember the day when Mitt Romney tried to throw his body across the tracks in front of the Trump campaign? He stood in a room, somebody forgot to turn off the slide projector, so there's PowerPoint on his face, and he tries to say, hey, this Trump guy is horrible. Don't vote for him. Don't back him. This is a mess. You are going to ruin our country. And then what happens? Well, then CNN and the other news stations, basically for the next hour or two, have an empty screen. I looked on one of them. They had an empty screen. On the right half of the screen were some American flags and an empty podium. The chyron at the bottom said Trump to rebut, Trump to speak soon, something like that. And on the left were a few talking heads. So that went on for about an hour. And then they gave Trump an hour of free airtime, which he completely understood was free airtime, to say whatever he wanted. And in that hour, he pimped his hotel, eviscerated Mitt Romney, talked about how wonderful his campaign was, how well everything was going, basically went on and on. And I just sat there in fascination, paralyzed by the incident. And in retrospect, in 2020 hindsight, what I wish had happened is the following. I wish Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN News, had said to the cameraman, okay, like, shut this off, put the camera on me right now. And then I wish that Zucker had looked at the camera and said, my fellow Americans, we've been hacked. I don't mean that Chinese or Russian hackers are busy in our servers, which they probably are. What I mean is, the guy we're showing you now has figured out how to use us against you. And until we figure out the dynamics here, we're going to show him less to you. We're going to give him less airtime. Now, a little problem here. Zucker owes half of his career to Trump. When Zucker made The Apprentice a primetime show that boosted his career path, they've known each other a really long time. Zucker is not really independent of Trump in any kind of way. For Trump and for modern power and for all the other people who are following Trump's tactics, attention is oxygen. Media is attention. The media is giving him free oxygen. They are pouring fuel on this fire. And in order to slow down these juggernauts, we need to cut off the oxygen. We need to actually reduce the amount of attention we pay to them. And a small parallel, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, after the Christchurch shooting said, we will not name this shooter. We will not give him infamy, because that's fame among the incels and the alt-right and the people who are busy shooting innocent people in schools, walking into houses of worship and killing people. Seriously, these people are heroes inside these twisted communities. We're not going to give the name any airtime. I think that's pretty brilliant. Now, you can't not name the president, but we can not rise to every little piece of bait. Recently, Stephanopoulos does an interview of Trump in which one of the things Trump says is, if you were offered a little bit of Oppo research from a foreign country, would you take it? And Trump says, well, sure, I'd take it. And I'm not sure I'd call the FBI, blah, 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 blah. 3 days of news. Eats the news cycle. Don Lemon, Rachel, everybody, everybody's busy chattering about this. What great bait. Everybody just went, right for it. Incredible. So there's something really dangerous about following the bait and giving Trump attention, and the media is extremely complicit here. Their business model forces them to do this. They are not like public broadcasting, which doesn't have to do this. And public broadcasting, of course, has been under siege from conservatives for years and years and years. If we made a Trident submarine a foot shorter, we could fund, public broadcasting into the next century, but we don't, do we? As far as I can tell, only Trump understands this version of modern power that I'm relating. Steve Bannon understands it too, and Bannon was in the White House for a little while, which raised his cred, then got bounced out, and is having a very merry time now, going from autocratic dictator to autocratic dictator around the world, helping them perfect their strategies. Now, the press doesn't get this, and the left doesn't get this, and I'm afraid that they don't understand what game is being played. God, I hate to say this. Trump is playing Calvin ball. I'm a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes, adore it. My first email handle online was spiff@well.com and spiff@panics.com after Spaceman Spiff from Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin ball is basically a game where the rules change at any moment at the whim of the player. It's an infinite game in James Carse's sort of definition of finite and infinite games. And Trump, I think, sees this as a game and loves doing this, and knows that the other sides, because this is all serious business, the other sides are playing by the Marquis of Queensberry or Robert's Rules of Order or some sense of decorum, structure, politeness, civility, fairness, whatever words you want to use. Everybody else is still playing by those, and I'm unclear that you beat Trump by lowering yourself to the kinds of savagery that he's engaged in. But Calvin Ball is inspiring here, and I think there might be some ways out by realizing that it's Calvin Ball and not going with the next ball thrown in the air. Modern power of the kind of dark variety I've just painted, I hope it's really temporary. It has basically shoved aside civic discourse. There have been eras in our history and in world history where people got together in town halls and wherever, hashed out issues, sorted things out, and went and changed their world. Basically used the legislative system and the judicial system and the executive system and all these different mechanisms for governance to actually make their worlds a bit better. But right now, my fear is that post-truth, post-fact is not an 8-year digression or detour, but rather a 200-year era. That us losing our grip on facts and science and journalism and the people who are supposed to keep things on the rails is a long-term break in what society is supposed to be doing.